Buying land around Calgary, Alberta to build your own home sounds like an absolute dream until you realize that not every parcel is created equal. I've seen parcels of land get purchased and then sit vacant for years because the buyers didn't realize the restrictions on use, or the cost of servicing took them by a complete surprise and it was way too expensive to actually develop that parcel. So in this video, I'm going to touch on the 5 things that you need to be aware of before you buy a bare land parcel to build your own home surrounding Calgary, Alberta. Plus at the end, I'm going to throw in one bonus tip that catches buyers by surprise. If you're looking for that piece of land surrounding Calgary, whether that be Rocky View County, Mountain View County, or Foothills County, just know that between the 3, each individual county has specific rules for different parcel sizes that can really affect how a property is allowed to be used. So let's jump into it and talk about the first item. Tip number 1 is land use and animal use. So one of the biggest misconceptions that most buyers have is that when you buy an acreage, because you have so much land, you can do whatever you want with it. And that is entirely untrue, especially when it comes to animal usage, more importantly, livestock. Most counties restrict the amount of animals you are allowed to have on your property, and it is restricted by land use size. For example, in Mountain View County, you need 3 acres minimum to have 1 animal unit. When we talk about animal units on acreages, typically 1 animal unit refers to 1 large livestock unit. So that would be 1 horse or 1 cow. Now that could also change and you can have, 5 or 6 sheep, or you could have 100 chickens. But all of those things count as 1 animal unit. So if you're looking to buy an acreage to have horses on it, know that depending on the different county that you choose to live in, you are restricted to a certain amount of land size in order to have those horses on your property. Tip number 2 is financing bare land. When you buy a standard house in the city, banks feel comfortable because there is a tangible property that can be then sold to another buyer, and there is a larger buyer pool. With bare and unserviced land, that becomes much more risky to lenders, and in the province of Alberta, there are some lenders that won't even lend on bare land, so it limits your options there. One other major difference with financing bare land is the amount of down payment you will need in order to actually get that loan, with areas really tight to Calgary seeing as low as 25 to 30%. Those are your Bears Paw, Springbank style areas. And then as we get further out, you could be paying up to 50% of the land value as a requirement for the down payment just to even get the loan. On top of that, interest rates for bare land loans are generally higher than the interest rates you will see posted for mortgages on standard properties. So that is a big thing that you need to keep in mind when purchasing that bare land. Tip number 3 is servicing costs. On bare land parcels, you are responsible as the buyer or owner of that property to complete and pay for all the services, unlike the lots in town that come pre-serviced. When it comes to water, there are some areas around Calgary, mainly in the Bears Paw area, that are on a communal water system. So you will not have to deal with a well. And when you buy that subdivision or buy that parcel, it is imperative you make sure that that membership or that hookup fee has been paid for you, so you do not have to pay after purchase. If you're buying a parcel of land that is outside one of those areas, then your 2 options are either a well or a cistern. The wells, you will be paying for the amount of feet drilled to hit water. So whether you get a dry well or water on the first attempt, you pay for that drill depth and then only pay for the pump once you hit water. So if you have to drill more than once, this can become quite expensive. Next up is the septic system. Very few acreages are on a communal waste system. So you will have to put in a private septic system. When it comes to those private septic systems, there are 2 main systems that are used on acreages, one being a field and one being a mound. That is dependent on whether or not the soils on that acreage test well enough to have a field. If they do not have the holding capacity for the wastewater in the ground, most counties are now requesting a mound where you come in and build up the ground with adequate soils and gravels and create the perfect drainage scenario for that lot. And those mounds typically run 30% more to install than a field system. Now, while that is a tough thing to test prior to buying, you can get an idea based on the actual appearance of the ground, whether it's super wet. If you're seeing kind of high groundwater and very moist soils, chances are you are going to be looking at a mound type system and to be prepared for that higher expense. Finally, you have power and gas. In rural Alberta surrounding Calgary, most acreages are part of a gas co-op area. So where I live in Mountain View, we are on Cochrane Lakes Gas Co-op, and everybody hooking up to gas has no choice but to hook up with that co-op because they kind of have that area under their umbrella. Unlike the rest of the province where you can choose your utility company, when you look at acreages, chances are you are going to be tied to one of those gas co-ops. When it comes to power, some of the newer acreages, especially the acreage subdivisions, all have underground power. So you may have power at the property line. So depending on how far you have to trench that power into your property, you pay that and the hookup fee. If you're looking at a more rural acreage parcel that is on, say, a range road or a township road, and there is overhead power at the ditch, you end up paying per pole as you come across your property. So the further set back your home is, the more expensive that install is going to be. Now, the next one is a really big one, especially if you're somebody that wants to put a large shop on your building. Tip number 4 is building size restrictions. All of the counties surrounding Calgary have different rules depending on the zoning of that property that restricts the maximum size and also the minimum size of buildings on the parcel. Typically, when you look at your primary residence, all of them will have a minimum size requirement. So the idea that you could buy this acreage and put a small tiny house on it, in a lot of areas, that is not a permitted use. So that is something you have to keep in mind, especially if you were looking to go more the off-grid route. There's also maximum building size requirements when it comes to accessory buildings. So if you're somebody that is wanting to buy that acreage to put a large outbuilding or a large shop there, you really need to pay attention to the zoning because you may not be able to build as big of a shop as you were once hoping to. On top of that, a lot of counties also have restrictions on the amount of the property you can actually cover with buildings. So there's a percentage of your actual land size that you can actually build improvements and buildings on. And that's all really important because it affects how you are going to use that property in the future. Tip number 5 is restrictions on title. A lot of times with these newer subdivisions, when we pull title as we look into the parcel, we'll see things like caveats and restrictive covenants and utility rights of way. All of these are extremely important things to pay attention to. When it comes to caveats, a common thing right now is that when subdivisions are done, where they take out, multiple 4-acre parcels along a range road, counties are requesting a right to purchase a small sliver of land along the perimeter of the property for future road widening. Now, when you buy that parcel, you are also buying all the restrictions that come on title. So you are then agreeing to selling that land back to the county in the future when they choose, or if they choose, to do that road widening. Other things that may affect you are utility rights of way. So there may be a gas line crossing or a power line crossing on these properties. And I've seen it where we've looked at properties that are 4 acres. And when you look at the utility right of way, you lose 2 acres of buildable space because you cannot build permanent improvements on those areas. So while you're paying for 4 acres, you're really only buying 2 acres of usable space. On top of that, some acreage communities have restrictive covenants that dictate the number of outbuildings you may have, the type of outbuildings you're allowed to have, and some further restrictions on exterior colors, exterior siding choices, and other building restrictions to make sure that the properties all conform to a general subdivision style. Things like that are very common in the Bears Paw area where they're trying to keep that more estate style aesthetic throughout the community. Now here's your bonus tip. On some acreage parcels, you're also going to find specific building envelopes. So much like a utility right-of-way, there may be areas of the property that you're buying that you are not allowed to build permanent improvements on. Some examples of this would be a wetland at the back of a parcel. You're not able to encroach on that because it's part of an environmental protection area. That is unusable land if you're wanting to use it for a building, a shop, or to set your primary residence further back in the parcel. Another common one is if you're buying a property along a ravine. Typically there is an engineering setback because of the stability of the hillside that restricts how close to the edge of that ravine or coulee that you can actually build your home. So again, these are all very important things you need to pay attention to ensure that you can actually build or place your home where you'd like to on the property. Buying land and building your dream home can be a really rewarding process, and it can get you that custom-built home of your dreams. But compared to buying a house in town, there is so much more to consider. From zoning restrictions, livestock restrictions, servicing costs, caveats on title, there is a lot to pay attention to. So if you're thinking about buying a bare land parcel around Calgary and you're looking for an expert opinion on what that land can and cannot be used for, and you want some help looking at those potential properties, reach out. My contact information is on the screen now, and it's in the description of the video. I'm always happy to help people try and find that perfect lot where they can build their dream home.